please may I welcome everyone to this meeting of Council in the Council Chamber at Castle Hill, Winchester, and welcome especially to members of the public who have submitted questions for Council. But the first item of business this evening are the minutes of the previous meeting of the Council. Members, the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 30th of November 2023, which are set out on pages 7 to 16 of your agenda pack. Are these agreed as a correct record? Thank you. The next agenda item is disclosure of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest to be made regarding the business before us this evening? Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to disclose a personal but non-prejudicial interest because I'm also a county councillor and there may be points that come up tonight that relate to both. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearson.
Bingo. Thank you. Yes, I've got to declare an interest, possibly prejudicial, when it comes to the motion that is on the agenda before us. I have a similar declaration of interest, even though I wasn't here at the last council meeting, even stronger declaration regarding the motion put forward by Councillor Morris. So I will not take part in the debate on that motion or anything related to the minutes of the last council meeting. And if you wish, I will leave the meeting for that. It's entirely up to you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Warwick, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to declare a personal but non-prejudicial interest this evening as a member of Hampshire County Council and executive member of Hampshire County Council.
Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make the same declaration as a member of Hampshire County Council.
So thank you. The next agenda item is announcements, and members, once again, I am already confirmed to attend many events before our next full meeting in February, as well as hosting visitors to Abbey House. But I'm very much looking forward to the annual Winchester Rotary Club pancake race on the 13th of February. Thank you, Councillor Rutter. On the 16th of February, please may I remind you, it's the annual quiz night in aid of my charities, which this year will be at the Millennium Hall in Littleton. And if you wish to come along with a team, you don't have to be mastermind, but I'm sure you're all clever enough and you can rustle up a team. Please contact me, that would be lovely. And just to say that on March the 3rd, it is the Mayor's annual pie and mash at Abbey House. So if you would like to attend, the lady to contact is Councillor Reid's dear wife, Jan, for that. Now I would like to say a few words regarding previous colleagues. Firstly, I was saddened to hear that Christine Lipscomb, who was mayoress to former Mayor of Winchester, Barry Lipscomb, in 2011 to 2012, passed away on the 10th of December. And my thoughts, and I'm sure those that knew them, are of course with Barry and his family. You will also remember that at the previous council meeting, I announced that former councillor and Mayor of Winchester, Chris Pines, was very ill and residing in a hospice, and of course, sadly to say that just days later, Chris passed away. Chris was a city councillor for 33 years, having first been elected in 1980 to the previous St John and All Saints ward. He was Mayor of Winchester from 2007 to 2008 and extremely active ward member. Chris was also chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee from 2012 until his retirement in 2015. So please, may I ask you just to stand in silent tribute to the memory of Christine Lipscomb, former mayoress, and Chris Pines, former mayor. Thank you. Thank you. Members, it was actually Chris Pines who introduced the annual Mayor of Winchester Awards, and so it is with great pleasure that I formally launch the annual Mayor of Winchester's Community Awards for 2024. This award recognises and celebrates the organisations and individuals who volunteer and provide such outstanding service to residents of the Winchester district. The closing date for nominations is 18th of February, and should you wish to discuss your nomination or any aspect of the award, please contact my secretary. The awards event is to take place on Thursday, the 7th of March at 7 p.m. in the Bapsey Hall, Winchester Guildhall. And finally this evening, I'm pleased to announce that with regard to the King's New Year's honours, I have written to the following recipients. Helen Margaret Ledbetter of Winchester, MBE for Services to Young Carers. Jeff Stelling of Bishop's Waltham, lately broadcaster at Sky Sports, an MBE for Services Broadcasting and Charity. The Reverend Professor Elizabeth Bridget Stewart of Winchester, lately Deputy Vice-Chancellor at the University of Winchester, an MBE for Services to Higher Education. Tina Ruth Coldham of Winchester, Participation, Involvement and Engagement Advisor at the National Institute for Health and Care Research, a BEM for Services to Inclusive Patient and Public Involvement in Research. Rachel Greenwood of Alresford, a BEM for Services to the community of Brandine and Hinton Ampner. Kirsty Elizabeth Tilley of Winchester, Programme Manager, Defence Science and Technology Laboratory, MOD, a BEM for Services to Defence and to Inclusion. Annabel Sarah Jane Berry, lately Superintendent, Hampshire Constabulary, a King's Police Medal. So I'm sure you will join me in congratulations to them all. Thank you. So, Mr. Macebearer, may I thank you once again, sir, for accompanying me this evening, and you may leave. Thank you. Leader, over to you, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to say a few words about recent issues to do with water supplies in Winchester. Over the last few days, following a failure at the Eastern Water Treatment Plant, many residents in Winchester and nearby communities such as Badger Farm and Kingsworthy have had problems with low water pressure, myself included. I know some residents, including councillors here this evening, have lost supply altogether for a period of time, and I've also heard from further residents that have been cut off for much longer, for several days. There are clearly lessons to be learned from what went wrong and also from how Southern Water responded. Have they learnt enough from previous occasions, adjusted to the feedback that they've been given? Have they adjusted to new circumstances, such as the effect that low water pressure has on heating during a cold snap? There will be an internal review inside the council in terms of our own direct experience and a council response to Southern Water, setting out our concerns. I will also be talking to Southern Water about options for a public scrutiny meeting. To inform the council response, it would be very helpful to hear the direct experience of councillors, and I will talk to officers about the best mechanism for capturing your observations, although feel free to send any comments through to Mr Hendy in the meantime. This is the third time in 2 years that we've had these problems. It's not acceptable, and I know I speak for all of us in wanting to learn what's going to change so that it doesn't happen again. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Strategic Director, do you have any announcements, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies for this evening's meeting have been received from the Chief Executive and from Councillors Greenberg and Eve. Thank you.
Thank you. The next agenda item is item 4, questions from members of the public, and welcome once again to members of the public who are here this evening and who have submitted questions. Thank you. So I understand that we've received 2 questions for this evening's meeting, and the questions received have been published on the Council's website. So please may I now call upon Senior Biddle. Senior, please could you address the meeting using the microphone? A reminder that the following response given by the Cabinet member, you may then ask a supplementary question which must arise directly out of the original question or reply. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. On? Oh, sorry. Will this administration support and fight for the green gap on the northern part of the site of Sir John Moore Barracks?
Thank you. Would the Cabinet member, thank you, Councillor Porter.
Thank you. And Ms Biddle, I'm afraid that my answer isn't as short as your question, but I hope it will be answer your question. In planning, green gaps are normally referred to as settlement gaps, and they're used to refer to space where development is not permitted in order to separate built-up communities. So our draft local plan has one defined between Winchester and Littleton, for example. That's a gap. And the local plan also requires the developer of Sir John Moore Barracks to make careful consideration of the settlement gap and other green infrastructure between the proposed site and Littleton. The area to the north on the Sir John Moore site can't be a green gap because there's no settlement on the northern side of it requiring separation. So green gap designation is not one that we could successfully defend via the local plan process. But can I assume that the site to which you're referring is actually the piece of land at the north of the site that's been put forward as a potential sink or site of importance for nature conservation? I thought so. So, of course, I fully support the Sir John Moore site having a strong green infrastructure for the benefit of the natural world, the residents who will live there and their neighbouring communities, and we await the outcomes of those just two matters before any confirmation can be given. One is the result of the consultations at events in November and early December 2023. We await the views of the public, which will be published by the Defence Infrastructure Organisation, the owners of the site. The next stage of the process will be to create the first concept plan, informed by those public comments, consultation with stakeholders and other studies. After a number of iterations, this will eventually lead to a master plan for the whole site, including that part. The second point is how Hampshire County Council will determine the outcome of the application for the new area of land to become a sink. So that's the situation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Senior, do you wish to ask a supplementary?
Well, really, I suppose you've sort of mentioned it, but I just wanted to ask then, therefore, would you, following the review of public opinion, the public consultation, support the designation of the site as a SINC, a site of importance to nature conservation, and the possible creation of a nature reserve, as proposed by the Littleton and Harestock Parish Council?
Councillor Porter?
Oops, sorry, thank you. So the designation of SINC is a highly technical decision based on a thorough ecological and biodiversity assessment made by Hampshire County Council, Natural England and the Hampshire Wildlife Trust. The primary criteria is ecological and geological interest. Provided the landowner agrees, sites to be evaluated for SINC status or review are surveyed using Phase 2 habitat survey methods and the integrated habitat system with species-specific surveys where SINCs are notified solely on species criteria. They're then evaluated against the habitat and species criteria published by the County Council and then recommended for selection to the SINCs advisory panel. Eligibility for the SINC status is then determined by the panel. It's not a political process. I don't think it should be one either. But I just wanted to mention that one of the things that came up at the meetings, the consultation sessions, and I attended all the round-the-table public consultation sessions and listened hard to comments. And many people were looking forward to walking dogs and enjoying the green spaces there. So a SANG was offered as an alternative of suitable designation, protecting the ecology but allowing recreation on the same area. And a SANG is a suitable alternative natural green space. It's a recreational site created to attract residents of new developments away from designated sites that are protected for their valuable ecology and are sensitive to recreational activities such as dog walking. And I hope that from all of these we can come up with something that suits everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter and Senior Biddle, for your question. Please, may I remind you that your question and the answer will be published on the Council's website with the minutes of this meeting. And you are, of course, very welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, and you're invited to be seated in the public gallery if you wish, and an officer would assist you. Thank you so much. So please may I now call upon Philip Hutchinson. Welcome, sir. If you would like to address the meeting using the microphone, and a reminder that following the response given by the Cabinet member, you may also ask a supplementary question which must arise directly out of the original question or the reply. Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, members of the Council. Economic prosperity is, of course, very important to the residents of the City of Winchester. While I acknowledge and commend the impressive achievement of a 5% vacancy rate in Winchester, as highlighted in the most recent Business Barometer report, number 48, a critical issue remains unaddressed. The current retail mix, though beneficial for tourism, does not adequately serve the everyday needs of local residents. Many find themselves compelled to travel to neighbouring cities like Southampton for access to many national high street brands. This situation raises a crucial question about the Council's priorities and strategic planning. When will this administration intensify its efforts to align the city's commercial offerings with the needs of its residents? Furthermore, what specific strategies are being developed to attract a more diverse range of retailers to Winchester, ensuring that our vibrant city serves not just visitors, but also represents and caters to the interests and necessities of its local community?
Thank you so much, Mr. Hutchinson. May I ask the Cabinet member then, please, to respond? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hutchinson, for your question. Until September 2020, the council was able to take a really strong and decisive line on controlling the profile of shops on our high street through the planning process. Unfortunately, in that very month, the government passed a regulation to change the rules of use classes so that a shop could change to a cafe or vice versa without the need for planning permission. And this is exactly what has happened, not just in Winchester, but also in other centres as well, including Southampton. As a result, our direct control has reduced. We are, of course, able to control our own properties, but a surprisingly small part of the high street is under our control. So if, for example, the owners of Debenhams, who happen to be Surrey County Council, decide to replace a department store with 3 restaurants, there is nothing we can legally do to stop them. But of course, we do try to influence the situation. Both the City Council and Winchester BID keep vacant property registers so that businesses can see what is available, and we can actively participate, and we actively participate every month in the BID board to make sure that we stay close to the views and interests of the business community. Officers and, where appropriate, cabinet members talk with businesses who wish to move to Winchester, and if we can't help them directly, then we connect them with someone who can. We also work with partners who share our views. We've been working to revitalise Middlebrook Street with the new King's Walk refurbishment, and have been delighted to see how the Brooks Centre has been filling up at the same time. And it's really great that Sports Direct have come to Winchester, for example. It also isn't just about national trains, although surprisingly we do have 99 different national chains in our centre. These include clothing, electricals, several supermarkets, shoes, sportswear, health and beauty, toys, pharmacy, hardware and banking. In addition, we have a vibrant and growing independent sector, which is really an important part of our offer, adding to our diversity and ensuring that smaller retailers are able to operate. And we also use our own shops outside of the city centre to enable daily shopping and a short walk from residents' homes. Our plans for central Winchester will also help our centre to continue to thrive. Every high street is changing. Out-of-town shopping, the internet, changing work patterns. It would be amazing if nothing changed in ours. Given these pressures, Winchester's High Street is one of the best performing in the country, with only 5% vacancy rate and consistently high footfall that other centres can only dream about. We need to celebrate this and, of course, do what we can to ensure that it continues to be the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Mr Hutchinson, would you like to ask a supplementary, sir?
Yes, I would. I appreciate the portfolio holder's response. However, what the bid also identifies is parking charges as one of the top challenges faced to local businesses. To local businesses' economic health. Has a portfolio holder factored into her strategy the parking charge situation, and what specific actions are being taken to mitigate the adverse effects of parking charges on the economical vitality and footfall of our local business community?
Thank you, Mr Hutchinson. Councillor Thompson, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Mr Hutchinson, you'd be delighted to hear, I'm sure, that we haven't seen any adverse effects of our parking charges on the footfall in the town centre. So that is, and also you didn't mention parking charges in your original question, so it's kind of a bit out of the blue. But I would also like to say that we are currently in the process of retendering our market contract. And when we do appoint a market operator, there will be other policies coming forward that will allow different types of markets to come into our high street, and therefore offering another way of residents to come and enjoy a different type of shopping than the normal high street shops. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. And once again, thank you, Mr. Hutchinson, for your question. And as I said before, the question and the answer will be published on the Council's website with the minutes of the meeting. And you are, of course, very welcome to stay, sir, for the remainder of the meeting. And you're invited to sit in the public gallery, and an officer will show you where to be seated. Thank you so much. I will move on now to agenda item 5, the licensing policy update. Mr. Ryan, would you please introduce? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Agenda item 5 is a report reference CL 170, which is regarding the licensing policy update, and this is included in your agenda pack on pages 17 to 72. Members, report CL 170 sets out that the Council is required to review and publish its statement of licensing policy every 5 years. The Licensing and Regulation Committee considered the policy, which had been subject to consultation at its meeting on 6th of December. An extract of the minutes of this meeting are included at Appendix 2 for information. The policy set out at Appendix 1 to report CL 170 and is inclusive of additional changes following review of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023, which references duties regarding national parks. To conclude, the recommendations for Council to consider this evening are set out in Report CL 170 on page 17 of your agenda pack, and these are also included on the agenda on page 2. The report's recommendations are for Council to adopt the Council Statement of Licensing Policy as set out in Appendix 1 to the Report CL 170.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ryan. Councillor Laming, would you move the recommendations in report CL 170, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Licensing Committee have scrutinised this report very thoroughly at 2 particular committee meetings, and therefore we would like to move that. And I'll hand back. Thank you.
I will ask, though, do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Porter, thank you. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak?
I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Are there any questions, please, councillors? Oh, Councillor Pearson, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I expressed this interest actually during the Licensing and Regulation Committee meeting, but I wish to express the same reservation as part of a question to the portfolio holder in relation to page 31, where it talks about integration of strategies, which is paragraph 2.13. Now, my question is related to why is it possible for conditions of a license to be granted by planning that are not the same as those that might have been passed by the licensing committee itself regarding, for example, noise from outside broadcast music?
Councillor Porter?
Thank you. 2.13 talks about the promoting tourism and the cultural diversity of the district and local employment, and it recognises that licensed premises provide a valuable contribution to these objectives. And we must remember that every licence that's given is only a licence until someone complains, and then it's reinvestigated. So I don't actually believe there's a conflict between the two. We have an opportunity, anybody has an opportunity to challenge a licence, which would mean that that licence could be reviewed.
Well, if you want me to, I was trying not to mention the particular one, but as you've asked for that in council, I will do so. I'm talking about a licence that was granted in the village of Curdridge. One of the public houses there has spent a lot of money on development of that establishment, I think in the region of £2 million. But what I'm querying is they wanted to have live music, which is broadcast outside the actual pub itself through a pizza oven area, which is open in one side. There are no controls on noise to that music. Now, I know from comments from residents around that establishment, they were all very concerned about that, as I suspect one of the councillors for that area would justify.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Porter, do you wish to comment?
Thank you. Of course, I can't discuss a particular case, but one assumes that the requirements for a licence to be granted were accepted at the licensing committee, or if not, they were just not queried at the time. But we do have a policy whereby anybody who isn't happy with the conduct of a licence has the opportunity to report it. And if that's the case, then that is true of any licence.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Any more questions? So I will move into debate, please. Any debate, ladies and gentlemen? No debate, so I will return. Oh, I apologise. Councillor Pearson, thank you.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I can't jump up and down like a jack-in-the-box physically. I'm not capable of doing it. So I will try to cover the particular points. First, the point that Councillor Porter mentioned, which I must admit had difficulty hearing the answer because her microphone is not transmitting enough sound through my microphone. Perhaps if all councillors could speak a little bit louder into the microphone, it would be very helpful. Now, there's that situation there that I highlighted where, for example, if through licensing we were talking about live music, we would have a maximum noise and noise controls over the sound that's being transmitted, particularly when effectively the creation of the music was actually outdoors. Now, the comment during the planning committee was a remark that, well, there are not many houses in that area. In actual fact, there are a fair number of houses in that area, all of which express concern about the fact there were no controls, which would have been put on the licence if it had gone through a committee of licensing. That is my concern. Now, I'm still going to vote in favour of this policy, so, I'm not raising that. I'm just simply emphasising concern that I have, that I wish to draw to the attention, particularly as you talk about coordination between strategies, and I understand there's a letter from government which was received today that talks about exactly the same thing, how you could get something through planning which you couldn't get through in the same way through licensing. Now, that is a quirk, and I would suggest it's a quirk we should do something about. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Any more for debate, please? Councillor Power, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a very similar incident locally where outside music was a nuisance to residents. I found that the suggestion that they should turn this down and curtail the hours of operation, otherwise it would be reviewed by licensing, dealt with the matter very effectively.
Thank you, Councillor Power. Councillor Laming, did you wish to speak now before you sum up later, sir?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to clarify that point. I have asked, actually, that we have a training session for the Planning Committee and the Licensing Committee to see where things overlap and where they go. But in general principles, planning is something that's given as permission and that is there for good. Licensing can be reviewed at any particular time, so therefore outside music and that can come back to the Licensing Committee at any time.
Thank you, Councillor Laming. Councillor Isaac.
I'd just like to clarify Councillor Power's comments in relation to this particular case that we had in our constituency. That particular case actually had a licence restriction, and they were in breach of that licence restriction. So it wasn't as if it was a situation where it was never granted. It was granted with restrictions because of an elderly residence nearby, and also to do with the gym and music and outside speakers. And environmental health were involved, and I was involved in several cases in getting those complaints. So the query is in relation to licensing is, I think it's really important when outside music, I would beg that the committees always look at the restrictions to residents nearby so that they can appeal with the licence restrictions, because it's not okay, because unless there's enforcement, then at the end of the day, people are still having problems if they breach that, and unless there are restrictions where outside music is looked at in a residential area, then I think really it's something that the council should look at in relation to licensing, that always, if it's outside music licence to be granted, that there is a restriction when it's within a village or residential area, because it does carry.
Thank you very much, Councillor Isaac. Any more for debate? If not, I will ask Councillor Porter if she would just like to, as seconder, say something. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. My first words are to say thank you to the Licensing Committee, who examined this really thoroughly at the first reading, and some small amendments were made, particularly regarding spiking, which actually then became part of a national conversation only a few weeks after, so they were well ahead of the game. And also we talked about the principle of using non-plastic glasses for outside drinks, and I greatly appreciate the input of people about that. We had the consultation between the 20th of September and the 22nd of October, and I hope that if you did have issues to raise, that you sent it into the consultation. We did examine every single response to the consultation, and we made changes appropriately, and that consultation was sent out to every single councillor, as well as a large number of stakeholders. And comments were received from Cheriton Parish Council, South Downs National Park Authority, Councillor Cremoyson, Itchen Valley Parish Council, Itchen Stoke and Ovington Parish Council, and New Alresford Town Council. I think basically there was a particular large festival that they were interested in. I just want to say that this paper actually relates to the national planning policy, national licensing policy. And as I've just said, I don't want to discuss individual ones, but you as councillors all have the opportunity to make a representation at any of the licensing papers that come up. They are all sent to you, not just ones in your own ward. They're sent to you, and you all have the opportunity to make those representations. And I have to say, in most cases, when I've made those representations, they've been well heard and listened to. So thank you very much to Councillor Laming. And we also did identify this challenge of having a planning application that linked to a time that wasn't to the licensed application. So a licensing application, once you've given it, it remains on the books. And so we have asked for that training to be given at some stage in the future. But I just want to say thank you to the members, and just to finish by saying that actually as part of it, we also at the very, very end, we did make a slight change because the rules changed during that time, which was that instead of saying to seek to further the purposes of the national park, we instead said have regard to, which apparently is a stronger statement. So this is Winchester's policy. It's compliant with the national policy. I do hope that the members of the public and the members here will be supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. I'll just ask Councillor Laming if you wish to sum up, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Porter has summed it up quite well, and thank you. And thank you to the members of the Licensing Committee that were so thorough in their scrutiny, and commend this report.
Thank you so much. So now we'll turn to the recommendations for Council in Report CL 170 on page 17 and also on page 2 of the agenda. Please may I now put it to the vote, the recommendations for Council. Please can I see a show of hands? All those in favour, thank you. I think you'll... Thank you so much. Thank you. The recommendation for council is agreed then. Thank you. So members, the next item of business this evening is agenda item 6, consideration and determination of the recommended minute of Audit and Governance Committee held on the 9th of November 2023. Mr. Ryan, may I please ask you, sir, to introduce?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Agenda item 6 is the recommended minute of the Audit and Governance Committee held on 9th November 2023. And this is set out on your agenda on page 2 and in the extract of the draft minutes of that meeting, which is on page 73. Report AG 103 refers, and this is also included in your agenda pack on pages 75 to 111. In summary, the recommended minute of Audit and Governance Committee is for Council to adopt the pay policy statement for the financial year 2024-25.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Power, would you move the recommended minute of the Audit and Governance Committee, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Audit and Governance Committee gave this policy a very good going over early in November, and we're very happy to recommend its adoption to Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder, may I ask?
I believe Councillor Cutler.
I'd say second.
Do you wish to reserve your right to speak, sir? Thank you.
I do.
Thank you. So, any questions, ladies and gentlemen? No. Any debate, ladies and gentlemen, then? Councillor Godfrey, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Once again, I'm proud that the Council has retained in this policy the accreditation to the Living Wage Foundation, which we introduced in 2013, and I believe that this is an important statement of the Council's intent to ensure that our lower paid workers are properly remunerated for their work. And we should continue not only to pay our own staff and encourage and require our contracted staff to receive this higher level of pay as a basic minimum, but also encourage other employers around the district to follow suit in this important measure of decent employer relations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. Any more, ladies and gentlemen, for debate? Councillor Pearson, thank you.
I also welcome this paper. It has to be reviewed regularly, as we all know, or at least most of us hopefully know. There's only one situation I've been concerned about for many long years, and that is whether the equal pay between men and women within our employees, and there is a section where you talk in detail about how many women as opposed to men. My apologies if the use of those two words upsets anyone, but those are the words that are actually in this document. Having been on the Human Resources Scrutiny Committee many years ago, we tried to exercise ourselves to actually see whether that policy was in operation. Now, and I've got to be so, as far as I was concerned, I didn't understand the response given, but I continue to be concerned that actually that is a policy that is being put into effect rather than just someone saying, yes, it is. The final point I want to make is there's a statement on page 89, which is paragraph 1.3 of Annex A, where it says there, the policy applies to employees of Winchester City Council who are members of the local government pension scheme. It does not apply to elected members of the council. Fair enough. But I wonder how many members of our officers are aware of the motion that was passed by council at the last council meeting about Hampshire pension policy? I'd be interested to know the answer to that question, because no one during the meeting, and I was listening to it online, no one in this room declared prejudicial interest because it would impact on their income. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Any more for debate, ladies and gentlemen? If not, I will ask Councillor Cutler if he would like to now speak as the seconder. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have very little to say. As Councillor Power pointed out, it's been well discussed at the Audit Committee. I think Councillor Pearson is mistaken. I too wasn't at the last council meeting, but I understand that Councillor Lerney did declare an interest and left the meeting. So yes. The very few members of council that had any interest did take part. I think on the gender equality side of things, in terms of pay, it's fairly clear from the reading of the paper that things are fairly balanced. The councils that have run into problems on this are those that have huge in-house the waste and that side of things, where there have been problems in the past, and that's where Birmingham ran into the problem. I don't think it's a consideration here. So I have, as I say, very little to say, having heard it all before. Most the amendments to the policy are all clear in the paper, and I hope that Council will be happy to accept the pay policy statement.
Thank you so much. So, Councillor Power, do you wish to sum up, please?
Very little to say, Madam Mayor, just that I'm slightly concerned that I agree with Councillor Godfrey so often. I think I did it twice at the last council meeting as well, but I'm sure we can find something we disagree on. Thank you.
I thank you, Councillor Power. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. It's the recommended minute of the Audit and Governance Committee as set out on the agenda on page 73 and in the extract of minutes on page 75. Is that approved? Please, may I have a show of hand? All those in favour, thank you. Thank you. So the recommended minute is agreed. Thank you so much. So the next item of business, ladies and gentlemen, is agenda item 7, which is the council to consider notices of motion. And we have one this evening. The agenda sets out this evening's motion, which is to be moved by Councillor Lee. Councillor Lee, do you have a seconder, sir, for the motion? Councillor Wallace, thank you. And do you wish, Councillor Wallace, to reserve your right? Thank you so much.
Madam Mayor, do you wish me to leave the meeting?
I don't think that will be necessary, Mrs. Adey, do you? Thank you. Can I just ask?
Sorry. Basically, it refers to, well, there's no page number of this, but there's a paragraph number, section 6 and section 5, where you refer to research that has been done without saying anything about that research, which concerns me. There's no comment. I know it was primarily done by Leeds University. I discovered that in the background references. There's no comment about the size of the sample, no comment about the demography.
Councillor Pearson, I think we are now going into Councillor Lee's motion that we haven't actually let him speak yet, so...
Well, he asked me to explain why...
No, Thank you, sir. It's the interest we need, don't we?
That's not a disclosable pecuniary interest that you would need to leave so that's not a problem.
The disclosure is that it's a policy that may impact on my income. Surprise, surprise, I'm concerned about that and downright prejudicial.
Well, if you feel that, then you should leave for the motion.
Yeah. Okay, Franks. Councillor Pearson, we will allow you to leave then, sir. I think, Councillor Pearson, we're all happy for you to remain in the room. Thank you, sir. So Councillor Lee, would you present your motion, please? You have a maximum of 8 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity to bring this motion to full council. Fellow councillors, you will have read the motion at item 7 that explains the Community Municipal Investment Fund. Hereafter, I shall refer to it as CMI, as is a bit of a mouthful. So it explains the Community Municipal Investment Fund, CMI, raising opportunity for Winchester, that mobilises community investments as a way of accelerating our journey to net zero. I don't intend to repeat the motion text ad verbatim. I'll pick out some of the key points. So some background. For those who are not familiar, the Green Finance Institute and Abundance Investment partnered to launch a national campaign to drive awareness and use of local climate bonds, a type of CMI that uses a crowd-funding model to raise funding for place-based green projects. CMIs are now issued by local government via a regulated crowdfunding platform that is FSCS regulated. The take-up of CMIs is accelerating across the country. CMIs were included in the Local Government Association's guide to financing green ambitions, and they're now being used by 9 councils, with another 4 council CMIs due by June, plus 2 or 3 imminent for a second issue. Investments are tied to specific net zero or nature projects. I'm sure you can imagine what those are, and I believe this gives Winchester residents an exciting opportunity to invest in local green projects. The cost of capital to council is more than competitive with Public Work Loan Board loans. CMIs also represent a powerful engagement tool with our community by connecting people to developments in our community. In an uncertain world, it provides a place-based income-saving product that supports our community. Describing CMIs another way, they can empower those affected by change. CMIs are available for everyone with investments from as little as £5. So everybody affected by climate or a nature emergency can engage to in providing a solution. In mobilising place-based investment enables local capital to fund local infrastructure, improves the local economy and the environment. It mitigates social risks for most vulnerable, helps to fund local government projects for non-frontline services, and can protect projects to support the vulnerable. CMIs, therefore, are an inclusive way for residents and institutions to contribute to our ambition for a zero-carbon and high-nature Winchester district. Winchester can learn from the CMI pioneers in developing appropriate local opportunities for local investors. I therefore propose in this motion that full council resolves to continue to develop CMIs for Winchester, to request officers to identify carbon-saving and high-nature projects suited to CMI investments in conjunction with any appropriate stakeholders. Once a suitable project is identified, than to scope methods to promote the CMI as a way residents and institutions can contribute to a new net zero carbon and high nature Winchester district. Madam Mayor, I'd look forward to the reply from the portfolio holder and the follow-on debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. We now have 20 minutes, councillors, to debate the motion. So, debate, please. Councillor Lerney, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The premise of this motion is that the council should commit itself to borrow money and then identify a project to spend it on. But I think it's worth reminding ourselves of some of the projects carried out by this and the previous administration using this council's own resources, grant funding and external income. Examples include solar panels on our own buildings, such as the city offices, leisure centre and the Barfield 2 Park and Ride, as well as on partners buildings, such as the Biffa Depot and Marwell Zoo. We're investing millions in improving energy efficiency in our housing stock, have installed air source heat pumps and other energy efficiency improvements in the Guildhall and city offices. We have built highly efficient industrial units to BREEAM excellent standards. And it's not just about carbon projects. We have our sewage works project, reducing nutrient discharges, new nature areas, wildflower areas in our parks, cemeteries and on verges, swift and backed boxes. We can go on and on. Looking forward, we're working on the feasibility of utility-scale solar, further work on our sewage works, and creating nutrient credits through improving our land. However, I can't think of a green project we could as a council borrow for within the Prudential Borrowing Code that has been rejected because of funding issues. Borrowing may well fund a number of projects going forward, on the back of a sound business case showing how we can afford the loan. Currently, the only open council investment on Abundance is offering a 4.85 a year interest rate for a 5-year period. The Public Works Loan Board is offering 4.75 for the same period, which can be done in minutes. Developing CMIs is a project in itself, which will take time and resource. They also incur fees upfront and annually. We support the principle of CMIs. They are in our policy, and there may well be projects the council wishes to carry out which are a perfect fit, but they may not be the most important projects we wish to take forward. This is, in a way, a solution right now in search of a problem. We have to identify our key projects first, work out the most efficient funding methods after. This motion puts the cart before the horse, and I'm sorry to say that although, as I say, we do support the principle of moving forward with CMIs, it's not a motion that I believe this council should accept at this point in time. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Councillor Bolton.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Well, Councillor Power, it's happened again. It's a seismic one this evening because I can't find a way of disagreeing with you about everything you've just said there. I too feel that, you know, this is the responsibility of the Treasury Department. Their job is to find the best financing in debt management. And I feel that, you know, this is, as you say, it puts the cart before the horse, unfortunately. And I think that, you know, I wouldn't want to support this motion as it stands. Although in principle, CMI, there's nothing wrong with that. But the Public Works Board, I think, given the paucity of municipal finances at the moment, is likely to be and continue to be cheaper than actually going out to crowdfunding and trying to get investors interested in council debt at the moment. It's going to be a tough gig. I'm afraid I won't be able to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too support the principle of this motion. I've been involved in the periphery of a very successful public bond issue to raise money for our football club. And we raised over £9 million from something very similar. The scheme is still open if you want to gain up to 7% per annum by supporting AFC Wimbledon. But it has cost a lot of time and effort to generate that level of interest from a community that football club support. And while the CMI would be a great way of generating interest in particular schemes, around the country where it has been used, Warrington, for instance, where they allowed investments of just £5 from an individual, it's cost a lot of money to run these schemes. So we mustn't assume that it is an easy way to raise a lot of money. It's not. It's a lot of hard work and therefore a lot of cost over and above the much simpler sources of funding which can be used quickly to support an appropriate project. CMI is a source of income outlined in our recently approved Treasury Management Strategy, and so is open for future, should that be appropriate. But the right project has to be identified, and the right funding source for the project must then be decided upon. So follow the project, not follow the funding source. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. Councillor Edwards, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a child, I was going back a way. I remember my grandfather showing me his corporation bond, beautifully copper plate printed, large piece of paper, and explaining how his modest savings were making his town a better place. His sense of municipal pride was palpable. I'm afraid, Councillor Lee, his money was probably going to building a ring road, but, you know, we're going back some time. Corporate bond certificates died with Grandad, but corporate community municipal investments in recent years using a crowdfunding platform, as we've heard, have emerged as a new way to engage local people in community projects, to keep capital in the locality, to enable people to invest ethically in things that they think are right, and to build what we now call pride in place. I would suggest that these are good liberal principles. I completely get the appeal of CMI and why we should be thinking about it. Indeed, we are already thinking about it. As the resolution notes, our financial and investment strategies already recognise it's a potential funding option. It's in our toolbox and it's ready to be considered as and when required. But the resolution proposes more than that. It's asking the Council to identify projects suitable for CMI and then use CMI to deliver them. That process seems to be back to front. Surely we should scope and prioritise net zero capital projects, or indeed any local projects, according to their costs, their benefits and their impact, and only then determine the best way to fund them. So that, amongst a few others, is one of the procedural problems that I have with the CMI model. A few local authorities have gone down this road, we've heard. I think it's up to about 13 now and done and in the pipeline. Their projects have, however, been quite modest. Early adopters also were interest rates of about 1.2%. Obviously, things have moved on, and it's not entirely clear to me that the model will fare well now that interest rates are so much higher and so much more volatile. I'd like to thank Councillor Lee for the helpful web links attached to the resolution. And I mean that seriously. It was good to be given some background reading. Unfortunately, the more I read them, the more cautious I became. CMIs have been hailed as a source of non-repayable capital because they allow investors to donate their interest to the council to help fund new projects. Of course, we may applaud people's altruism, but the amounts donated have been small. Nevertheless, they have fed into the use of this phrase, non-repayable capital, which somehow has an echo in my mind of the magic money tree. Councils are required under this system to repay the capital they have borrowed as well as the interest either throughout or at the end of the term. As I understand it, Winchester City Council's challenge is not so much attracting capital for smaller and medium-sized projects as finding secure revenue streams to pay the interest during their duration. Pre-selecting CMI-friendly projects would not address that challenge, and it might tempt us to deliver projects that are not optimal for us. As for the larger scale projects, which we and other districts, indeed the whole country, is going to require to achieve net zero.
Councillor Edwards,
over.
I do apologise, sir, but we have a few that wish to speak in debate. So is there any way
Of course,
you
Madam
could...
Chair. No, I would just conclude
Thank you,
by
sir.
saying that
I do
think
apologise, but thank
you're
you.
Quite right, of course, whatever you say. No, I don't think we need to proceed with this any further. Thank you.
I wasn't being rude, sir. I do appreciate it. So thank you so much. Councillor Miller, thank you.
Thank you. I will keep it very short in that case. I think we could spend a lot of time of the council, and particularly the officers, looking into this matter as it's written, and ended up with achieving nothing apart from spending an awful lot of our officers' time that, quite frankly, they could use elsewhere doing some of the other schemes. And I agree with many of other reasons why we shouldn't do it. It's already spoken, so I'll end it there.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Tippett-Cooper, thank you.
Also looking for ways to shorten what I was going to say. So Climate Emergency UK assessed and scored all UK councils on their action on climate change across the whole country, and Winchester City Council came 5th out of 164 district councils there. We do have want first place, and we must continue our progress on climate action, but it sounds like for this there's agreement in the room that the spirit of the motion comes from a positive place. CMIs are a positive idea and a possible source of funding for climate projects. But I think one of the issues with this motion appears to be that it commits valuable officer time, and it is worth re-emphasising just how hard our officers work already, to investigate projects that only fit with CMI investment. And I worry that's a bit limiting and may mean we miss out on reviewing possible projects that further our climate action aims that may not, strictly speaking, be suited to CMIs and could, for example, be funded by other sources. And some of the issues with CMIs have been well articulated already. And this motion says that all environment projects need routine, robust business plans based on the council plan and the CNAP. This I don't think anyone disagrees with, but such a plan surely is, the logical process of such a plan is, firstly, you identify the project first, assess the costs, and then assess the possible funding. And this is indeed what we do, and Councillor Lerney has identified the huge number of ambitious climate action projects the council has started and delivered, and is indeed why we are one of the best councils, district councils, for our action on the climate emergency, and I commend Councillor Lerney and our officer team for their achievements to date in that regard.
Thank you, Councillor Tippett-Cooper. Councillor Horrell?
Madam Mayor, thank you for allowing me to speak. And
Thank you to Councillor Lee for raising this matter. And when I read the motion when it was first published in the agenda, I thought, oh, that's not an unreasonable suggestion. But then when I looked further, I think, like many in the chamber this evening, I'm concerned about the efforts and the resources we would need from our officers to be involved in such a scheme. I'm also concerned in the current context of local government finance that this is not necessarily one of our top priorities. We have other things that potentially we should be paying attention to, and I'm grateful for Councillor Cutler nodding at that point. And I know we have a really excellent team of financial experts who help us to find the right resources and have done historically over many years to fund the projects that we wish to pursue. And indeed, we have pursued many of them. And so on that basis, I think there are many reasons why we already have the mechanics in place to deliver sound financial models to produce the results for the projects that we want, and that this particular motion today does not actually deliver anything incrementally, and in fact will detract from our valuable officer time. And I don't think at this point, Madam Mayor, we can support that as put to us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. I will now ask Councillor Wallace if you would like to exercise your right to speak now, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think anybody listening to the debate tonight might think that we were on track with our ambitions locally to get to both internally within the council to get to net zero this year or next year, and also as a district to reach it by 2030. And the truth is, we are not. We are a long way off track, particularly at achieving that goal of reaching net zero in 2030. For all the good words that we've heard from the administration, real action has been slow, and CMIs are an opportunity to accelerate that. But let me be clear, approving this motion doesn't mean that we're committing the council to start collecting CMI funds tomorrow. No, we're only committing the council to investigate how CMI projects could work for Winchester and to identify suitable projects. If both of these requirements are met, then any CMI project would still need to come back to council, or cabinet at least, before it could move forward. So the question is not why you should support this motion, but why shouldn't you? 9 councils around the country have completed their own investigations and are already running their first CMI-funded projects. These councils are led by administrations from across the political spectrum, including administrations led by both Conservatives and Liberal Democrats. And in fact, 2 of these councils are now proceeding with their second round of CMI projects because the first round was such a success. But it's not just about raising money and moving projects forward. One of the powerful lessons learned from the CMIs run to date is that they also provide an opportunity to strengthen residents' engagement with the council by highlighting projects to residents and involving them in providing a solution. As Councillor Edwards eloquently described, this was, in fact, the way that local councils used to get funded many moons ago. Money would be raised from the local populace to fund key council projects. Over time, the funding model has changed, and one of the things that has been lost is that connection from local residents to the council. Along with all the good things that CMI projects can do to accelerate our transition to net zero, engaging more closely will help to strengthen the council's relationships with our residents. I encourage you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wallace. I am now going to close the debate of Councillor Lee's motion and ask him to now exercise your right to reply to debate, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to fellow councillors for their heartfelt thoughts and suggestions of caution. What is not to like about a tool which is a financial engagement and social value tool? in my view, it is a win-win with minimal risk. It's not a case of cart before horse. It's a case of perhaps also thinking about challenging behavior, getting buy-in, and I think this tool has those merits. As I said in the text of the motion, analysis points to potential demand for local investments in local projects of circa 200 million within a typical council's area. And I dispute that it is a higher rate. I believe it is a cheaper rate. I have the latest figures based on analysis in August. Then a public work loan rate, for example, 5.59 for the Public Works Loan Board versus 4.84 for a CMI. In my arithmetic, that's nearly 0.75% difference. I think that's significant. I'd also like to dispel any concerns about interest rate changes, because the analysis that I've seen suggests otherwise, that it is not a concern. So why wouldn't we as a council want to tap into a source of funding plus build stronger community links at the same time? So this is not just a case about fundraising. And of course, it's already been mentioned, the delegation for Treasury management, of course, lies with our finance officer. And naturally, we wouldn't expect to see the wrong candidate project identified for CMI funding. Due diligence remains the highest priority and the watchword for our finance officer and this council. We applaud caution and must apply caution when borrowing, given the increasing problems with other councils. And I do believe, based on the analysis, that some of the concerns I've heard tonight are well overstated. We know CMIs emulate the ease of use of the Public Works Loan Board. Their pioneers have been through this process before. It's not a case of starting from ground zero. We can learn through osmosis and by engagement with those who've been here before. The CMIs are accessible to ordinary investors, low minimum investment, are ISA eligible, helping to improve residents' financial security. They mirror green loans, they're bond compliant, the UK government's green gilt and green national savings investment products. CMIs are platforms for engaging, as I've said, and involving residents with our strategy, building trust and understanding, as well as driving additional social value and local economic benefits. As I said, as a council, we might feel we lack the knowledge and experience to launch these bonds, but the concept is simple and straightforward. There are sufficient local authority crowdfunding decision-making flowcharts, which is not rocket science. They're available to help us determine whether a community municipal bond is right for the right project. That is accepted. There is ease of management, as this is largely done by the regulated crowdfunding platform, which is run by Abundance Investment. It is FSC regulated. And as I said, granted there's a learning curve for the council, but all indications are CMIs are not difficult to set up, as demonstrated by the trailblazing local authorities. Of course, we must value our financial officers' time, but I would suggest this is overstated in terms of difficulty or time consumption. And as I say, of course, any low-carbon or high-nature project needs a robust business case, which has already been mentioned, and I think that goes without saying, as it must fit our council plan and other concerns. In sum, the CMIs would be a new finance and engagement tool for us to channel local savings into local projects with, I believe, low risk and a reasonable return to investors. And as we already said, it is in our Treasury management strategy, so we know it is a funding option and we've accepted that. So let's get on and find the right project and start the CMI process, as it will take time, and our low carbon and high nature ambitions don't have the luxury of time if we want to meet our declared targets. I fully commend this motion to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Appreciated. So, members, is Councillor Lee's motion agreed? I would like a show of hands, please. All those in favour, thank you. All those against, thank you. Yes. Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you so much. I will now say that the motion, and I thank you once again, Councillor Lee, is not supported this evening. Thank you, sir. So the next item of business this evening is agenda item 8, which is the appointment of monitoring officer. Strategic Director, would you please introduce? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Your agenda this evening explains that following the resignation of the existing post holder, the Council is to appoint Lisa Kirkman as monitoring officer for the Council. The Chief Executive exercised their powers under Urgency Procedures Part 3.4, Paragraph 5.3e, to appoint Ms Kirkman with effect from the 1st of January 2024, having considered that the proposed monitoring officer has the appropriate knowledge, skills and experience to undertake this role. Members, to confirm, the recommendation for Council is on page 4 of the agenda and is that Ms Kirkman be appointed monitoring officer for the Council.
Thank you, Mrs A.D. Is there a proposer for the recommendation, please? Councillor Todd, thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Cutler, thank you. Apologise. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Is the recommendation as set out on the agenda on page 4 approved? Please, may I go straight in and see a show of hands? Those in favour, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe that's a majority. If we could check if there's any votes against or abstain.
Any votes against? Anyone, any abstentions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
No, thank you. So the recommendation is agreed. Thank you so much. I now go to item of business, agenda item 9, which is information for the Council. And Councillor Todd, I believe you have an update for us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. At our last full council, we agreed a new constitution which laid out the idea that people appointed to outside bodies would report back as a formal agenda item on what those bodies are doing and what they're up to. Certainly the way I'd imagine it working is that on occasion, once a year, there will be a full report on the work of a particular body. But I also think it's important that where a decision is taken that is of direct interest to members of the council, that an interim report is made. And what I want to do on this particular occasion is make such a report. Perhaps a bit of background. I've talked in the past about the Partnership for South Hampshire, and given that I'm making a more formal report, it's probably useful to say what that is. So it is a partnership of 11 local authorities, a mixture of district councils, Portsmouth and Southampton as unitaries and Hampshire County Council, towards, and also the New Forest Park National Park Authority in the south of the county that consider work together primarily to facilitate the strategic planning functions necessary to support growth across that area. We've been a member for some time, although in consideration of the area, of the push area, only part of the district is included, the southern part of the district is included within the Partnership for South Hampshire area. The way that decisions are made at the Partnership for South Hampshire is by what's called a joint committee, which is made up of the elected leaders of each of the member authorities. On the 6th of December 2023, the Partnership for South Hampshire Joint Committee met to consider 2 substantive papers. First, we were asked to note the Statement of Common Ground, the Broad Areas of Search for Growth Assessment. And secondly, we were asked to approve a spatial position statement. And this statement is intended to demonstrate the collaboration of the affected authorities in identifying, in this case, 7 locations as broad areas of search for sustainable strategic scale development to potentially deliver a combined total of approximately 9,700 homes. The 7 areas identified, which are available in the published minutes of Partnership for South Hampshire, described as the southeast/east of Eastleigh Town in the Eastleigh Borough, Havant Town Centre in Havant, Waterlooville Town Centre, also in Havant, Southley in Havant, an area east of Romsey in Test Valley, an area to the southwest of Chandler's Ford in Test Valley, and in Winchester, an area east of Botley. So for those of you who don't know that part of the district well, the river runs through the edge of Botley, and between the easterly side of Botley, which is Botley Town that we would know, there is a small section of what to all intents and purposes is Botley, although it sits within Curdridge Parish. And then a short distance further away is Botley Station. And it's in that area that has been identified following an analytical work done by the County Council and by Partnership for South Hampshire as an area of search. Now, let's be very clear, this is not a local plan style decision, and that's an important point. So the SPS report is clear that this is not an upper tier plan with which local plans need to conform. It's designed to assist all local planning authorities within the Partnership for South Hampshire to progress their local plans, and something that is critical for our local plan to be agreed, provide evidence of a duty to cooperate. It also doesn't remove our own requirement to consider the suitability and deliverability of these areas in our local plan process, either local plans that are currently under development or something that's also an option in future reviews of those local plans once they've been adopted. So that was the decision that we took. I thought it was important that you knew about it. And I think we've agreed, Madam Mayor, that I'm happy to take any questions.
You are correct, Councillor Todd. We just have time for a couple of questions. If it goes beyond more than 2 or 3, you can defer your questions direct to Councillor Todd at any time. So, Councillor Brooke, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question will save you time later, because I'd put it in as councillor questions, so we can skip that one. So, Councillor Todd, as you've probably seen, question 12 of the councillor questions, I'd actually raise this. And whilst I acknowledge that duty to cooperate is not the same as duty to do, this area of land has been discussed several times. And it seems inevitable that sooner or later development will happen here. So how would that affect, as part of our local planning, and to you, Councillor Porter, as part of the local planning, the allocations for the rest of the district? Because this area would take a huge number of houses. So if we are truly considering this and analysing this as part of a local plan, it seems quite an obvious choice for somewhere to develop. How would that affect the rest of the local planning process?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Brooke. It's a very good question. I think it's important to identify that this is, I think we would say it is not yet, so it is very firmly described as an area of search and not as an allocation. This spatial position statement is not a local development document, and it will not be part of the adopted development plan. It's not had, for example, any public consultation. And I do not believe that the proposals within it at this point in time are at a stage of detail that would justify reconsideration of our entire spatial strategy. So in answer to your question, how does it impact or eliminate allocations across the district in the current version of the local plan that we're operating on? I would say that it doesn't. We do have a duty to consider, as with any input that comes forward, what is put forward in this report as we prepare our Reg 19 submission. However, subject to doing that consideration, I personally believe, and I currently believe, that the most appropriate time to review these recommendations, for areas of search, will be in more detail during the next local plan cycle.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll allow it. Go on then.
Sorry, Councillor Godfrey. Just as a brief response, so to clarify, you're not expecting anything to happen on this within the next 5 years or so. It would go through the next local plan cycle. Otherwise, it would be in addition to our forthcoming local plan. Is that what I'm hearing?
I do not believe that the evidence that is put forward within this spatial position statement is such that we would be revising what we are likely to submit at Reg 19. The only thing I would say is, and we'll come on to this in some of the answers to questions later on, is that the impact of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act of 2023 is such that the nature and the cycle of local plan revision is due to accelerate quite significantly. So yes, I don't believe it is something that, firstly, we have not made any decision in terms of allocation, and that is a process that will need to be properly gone through, as it would be for any other site. And secondly, it is not something that will happen in this local plan cycle, but it would be the one after, where I think we should, or we would be in a position for proper consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. As I said earlier, I will only take a few questions. I have 3 in line, and that will be it, ladies and gentlemen. Then if you do have any questions, please direct them to Councillor Todd at any time, I believe. Thank you. Councillor Pearson, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was surprised I'm so queue in the queue. Councillor Todd, it's a query, because I may have misunderstood the news report that I have read, and that is, as I understand it, the area to the west of Curdridge, between Fair Oak and Botley, is under orders of review within the Eastleigh City Council, bearing in mind the massive debt the Eastleigh City Council is carrying at present. Am I correct, or completely am I bemused about that?
Councillor Todd?
Not entirely sure which particular area you're referring to. Are you talking about Borley Green or?
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly. Sorry, Councillor. So Borley Green is already allocated, I believe, in the Eastleigh local plan, so was not a factor in the consideration of these particular areas of search.
I mean, so many names used for this area, Councillor Todd. I'm talking about the area to the west of Durley and down as far as Curdridge, and that is to the north of Botley, where there already is house building in that area. And as I understand it, from the Gove report about councils that are in debt, auditors are looking at that particular scheme. Now, I may have misunderstood, or are you talking about another area farther to the west of that area? Because if you go east, you're in Winchester District.
For obvious reasons.
Excuse me, but several microphones have
They've all
now
gone
come
on.
on, please.
Can people hear me?
Thank you.
Okay, good. The Borley Green the Borley Green project was not part of the discussions that relate to this particular paper. I think there's another point. If you look at the geography of the local area, a very simple way of showing that they are separate areas is that the area that we're looking at is to the southwest of the railway line, and Borley Green is to the north of the railway line. So they are completely different areas that we're talking about.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace, thank you.
Yes, apologies if I missed it, but we talked about an area